What's up, guys? Me, Alan. I'm back with another video today, and today, I don't normally do mock draft videos, but I figured today, that's what I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna do a one round mock draft. I've already done it, over on the draftnetwork.com. I have it right here, so I'm gonna go ahead and tell you what I got, and then we'll see what happens going down the road. Obviously, we're sort of in a limbo period between the end of the regular or between the end of the previous season and the beginning of the new one. Um, we have the Jared Goff Stafford trade and the Carson Wentz trade that have both happened. So that does change things up a little bit, but they're not official until the beginning of the new season. But regardless, let's go ahead and get into this. So, number one overall pick in the draft, Trevor Lawrence going to the Jacksonville Jaguars. That's a no-brainer. Um, Honestly, I don't think Jacksonville's going to do anything else besides take Trevor Lawrence. I would be shocked if they didn't. But I think that's the move for them. So, going on to the number two pick with the Jets. I've been saying this for a little while now. I really feel like the Bengals should move up to number two to get Penei Sewell. Now, you could argue, and so I've seen some mocks say this, that Sewell could fall to them at five because a lot of people have the Jets taking a quarterback at two. You got the Falcons in the top five who could take a QB, and I'll get to them in a minute. Um, but and then of course the Dolphins at three, who, really I think the Dolphins probably would take either Sewell or Jaylen Waddle. If I'm the Bengals, though, you have to look at what happened with Joe Burrow last year. That offensive line was fucking shit, and they need help on that offensive line badly. And I feel like if you trade up, I mean, if you can get Sewell regardless, that's a good thing. But if you trade up to get him, I think for the Bengals, I think that shows the fans that you're willing to give up a bit of draft capital to move up to get a guy that could end up being, on that offensive line for Joe Burrow and protecting him for the next decade. You know, the Bengals have not had a really good offensive tackle, I would argue, since Andrew Whitworth, and they have, obviously they had the Hall of Famer Anthony Munoz way back in the day, but um, so for the Bengals, I have them giving up the fifth, 38th, 111th, and their 2022 first round pick to the Jets for the second overall pick and the 147th overall pick, and the Bengals take Penei Sewell. And then at number three, Jaylen Waddle going to the Dolphins. Um, Obviously, right now with all the Deshaun Watson, stuff that's going on with him, there's a question of the Jets could possibly get him, the Dolphins could possibly get him, and both teams have a lot of draft capital that could entice the Texans to do a deal if the Texans could get off their shit and, actually want to trade him because he wants out. They don't want to get rid of him. Obviously, there's the dead cap involved from trading him. It's a whole fucking thing. Um, but I feel like right here for the Dolphins, it's either Sewell or Waddle. And if the Bengals move up to get Sewell, then it's going to be Waddle. I think there's a good chance that the Dolphins could take Waddle regardless, but you could also argue the Dolphins taking Sewell to protect Tua or Deshaun or whomever they have, especially since they gave up Laramie Tunsil to get the picks from the Texans, one of which being the third overall pick or would become the third overall pick. So there's that to think about. But I think in this case, they get Waddle. And then we have another trade. This one, I have the Falcons moving down from the fourth pick. I have them moving down with the Broncos, and the Broncos move up to number four and get the 108th overall pick as well for the 9th, 71st, and 153rd overall picks. And with that, the Broncos take cornerback Caleb Farley. Um, I feel like the front four and the linebacking core is pretty solid. I mean, there's a few tweaks you can do. Obviously, we have no idea what the hell's going on with Von Miller. He could be gone, he could be staying. We don't know yet. You have Bradley Chubb, you have some other guys. I think for the Broncos, they need to look at the defensive backs and try to, make some moves there. And I think this is a good move. And on top of that, um, it's the Falcons moving down. I think that's the move here. And then, so obviously the Jets, they moved down from 2 to 5. I have them taking wide receiver Jamar Chase out of LSU. Now you could say, well, why aren't they taking a quarterback? Again, Deshaun Watson. That's the reason why. Because, well, and even if they don't get trade for Deshaun, because they could also throw Sam Darnold in that trade, they still have Sam Darnold. We don't know what Robert Saleh is going to do. Because, they have a new head coach. I think you give Darnold one more year. If he doesn't get traded in a deal for Watson, if Darnold is the Jets quarterback in 2021, give him one more year, and if things don't pan out with him under Robert Saleh, I think you trade him next year. But so in this case, getting a wide receiver in Jamar Chase should help him out. At number 6, you Philadelphia, you get your Zack Ertz replacement in Kyle Pitts. Now, do we know if Ertz is going to get traded or not? No, but there have been rumors. So I think the safe pick is get a guy that's going to replace him. If he does get traded, Kyle Pitts is the guy. And then we have another trade. This time, the Lions and the Cowboys. The Cowboys moving up from number 10 to number 7, giving up the 75th and 99th picks in the process to get offensive tackle Christian Darrisaw out of Virginia Tech. When was the last time you saw 2 Virginia Tech guys go in the top 10? But the Cowboys have a massive issue with that offensive line. You go back a few years, that offensive line was one of the best in the league. You had guys like Tyron Smith, Doug Free. I'm trying to remember the other ones, but there were some really good ones on the offensive line. That the Cowboys O line is not what it used to be, and we don't know what's going to happen with Dak. The Ezekiel Elliott contract, in hindsight, does not look good whatsoever because he has not been what he was before he signed that huge deal. And the Cowboys are just in straight turmoil. So if you're gonna rebuild anything, you've gotta rebuild that offensive line in Dallas. Christian Darrisaw is the move here. So then we got Carolina and then Atlanta following them after trading down with Denver. And then Detroit after trading down with Dallas. So Carolina and Atlanta, I'm having both of them take quarterbacks. For Carolina, they get Justin Fields, and for Atlanta, they get Zach Wilson. Now, I'm not as gung ho on the Falcons taking a quarterback right now because they still have Matt Ryan, and Matt Ryan is still a solid QB. He may not be what he was a couple of years ago, his MVP form, but he's still a very solid quarterback. And I don't think Ryan is done by any means. So I think with Zach Wilson, I think he sits under Ryan for a year, and then we'll see what happens after this season. Maybe next offseason Ryan gets traded. Who knows? But going back to Carolina at number 8, they get Fields. He's probably going to be their QB of the future, and that's the thing with this top 10 is you have teams like obviously Jacksonville at number 1 taking quarterback. You have the Jets. We don't know what's going to happen with them. Either it's going to be Darnold, Watson, or one of these guys in the top 10, whether it's, Fields, Wilson, whatever. You have Atlanta, who is probably looking at getting a QB for the future. Denver's QB situation isn't all that, certain with Drew Lock. I don't understand why Philly has a QB, need when they have Jalen Hurts. Dallas, you could argue, has one if they can't get Dak back. And then obviously Carolina, Atlanta, and then Detroit just traded Stafford for Goff and picks, but Goff isn't the long-term solution in Detroit. But At number 10, having moved down with Dallas, I do have Detroit taking Devontae Smith out of Alabama. Does that mean that they get a third generational talent to possibly ruin because Detroit is mediocrity defined? Who knows? But I think Devontae Smith will probably be the best receiver that the Lions have had since Calvin Johnson. And they have, and really, the only wide receiver that you could argue that's been anywhere near as good or close could probably be Kenny Golladay, but not really. Like, Kenny Golladay is really good, but not Calvin Johnson good. So, we'll see what happens there. And then the next few picks are kind of straightforward. The Giants, you could call this maybe a little bit of a reach, but not necessarily. I think they take Kwity Paye out of Michigan. He's an edge guy. Um, the Giants, you have to figure something out on that offense with Daniel Jones, but at the same time, bolstering the defense is always good. If Devontae Smith falls here, I do think that the Giants could end up taking him, but we'll see what happens. San Francisco at number 12, they add another guy to the defense and Patrick Surtain II from Alabama cornerback, I should say. Their situation is, are they going to keep Jimmy Garoppolo or are they going to trade him? If you were watching the Dumpster Fire Media Day stream the week of the Super Bowl, you may have noticed that I dropped in a super chat regarding apparently Kirk Cousins is being looked into to getting traded for. I don't. It feels like we're going to have a few quarterback for quarterback trades. We've already had one with Stafford and Goff, but yeah. So I think for the Niners, they just continue to bolster that defense. The Niners' biggest issue has been injuries. 2018, they got wrecked to shit. 2019, they were not as wrecked to shit, and they were able to get to the Super Bowl as a result. And then last year, they were wrecked to shit on both sides of the ball. So they've got a lot to do in that regard. They don't really have much to do in terms of the team as a whole. Maybe on offense, but we'll see. For the Chargers, I have them taking Rashawn Slater at number 13 from Northwestern. He's an offensive tackle. And I think for the Chargers, their biggest issue was coaching. I like the Brandon Staley hire. I think that's a good move. And I'm really interested to see what's going to happen with Justin Herbert going forward. Last year, even with all the fuck ups that Anthony Lynn had with clock management and all of that, Herbert kept that Chargers team in games. You could argue that the Chargers should have been in the playoffs last year with the amount of close games that they lost that they should have won. I mean, look at the beginning of the season. Like, the very first game that Herbert plays, and he doesn't know he's starting until maybe a little bit beforehand because of the issue with Tyrod Taylor. That Chiefs game, they lost on an overtime field goal right out of the gate. I mean, Herbert looked amazing against them. Against Carolina, that was his sort of like, welcome to the NFL game. But they still had a chance to win. They just botched a lateral on the final play of the game. And then you look at the Saints game, the Buccaneers game. They just could not hold a lead. There was a chance for a comeback against the Bills late in the season. But again, Anthony Lynn, clock management, they don't seem to go together. That Chargers team should have had 7, 8, maybe 9 wins at best the way that season went. So I think getting Rashawn Slater on that offensive line is a smart move. And, they honestly don't have much that they need to do. I just feel like they might need to do a little bit of retooling. And that team should be a playoff contender, even with Patrick Mahomes in the same division. So, at 14, I have the Vikings taking Elijah Vera Tucker, interior offensive lineman out of USC. I think the biggest issue with them, again, is coaching. If you've been paying attention, it feels like, with Mike Zimmer, maybe the game's passed him by a bit, the modern offense and whatnot, but he got extended. He and the GM both got extended before last season, so they're not going anywhere right now. And of course, a lot of people will blame Kirk Cousins, but it's not all his fault. So I think for the Vikings, they just add to the offensive line. and go from there. And then we have another trade to do. And this one involves my Patriots. Now, as I made a video earlier this year, with a realistic view of the rest of the season at that point in time, and then of course they pulled off a couple of wins and then came back to reality as I expected. Um, they do their typical trading down thing, but there's a reason why they're doing it, and it has to do with the team that they're trading with, the Bears. I have the Bears moving up from 20th to 15th. Um, and they get the 96th overall pick as well, while the Patriots get the 83rd and 165th overall picks back from the Bears. And the Bears are trading up to get Trey Lance out of North Dakota State. Now, you could very well argue that the Patriots could take him, but I think there are some other options. I'm hearing a lot about Marcus Mariota. The odds bettors are saying that he could be their starting QB next year. Being an Oregon fan, I would love that, but we'll see what happens. As for the Bears, we all know what happened the last time they traded up for a quarterback, moving up one spot from third to second with the Niners to get Mitch Trubisky, and that didn't go well. I think Trey Lance could very well work out, but really it comes down to the team around him. There's a question of, is Allen Robinson going to be back? Probably won't be. Um, and some other things. I feel like with the Bears, it's always relying on that defense, and the defense is usually really good, but you've got to figure something out with the offense. For the Cardinals at 16, I have them taking Travis Etienne from Clemson. He's a really freaking good running back. Uh, you know, Playing alongside guys like Trevor Lawrence and whatnot over at Clemson. Um, I think he's the move here for them. Try to take some of the pressure off of Kyler Murray having to run all over the place, but you know they've got to figure something out with the offensive line, and probably eventually are going to have to find a Larry Fitzgerald replacement because he's not going to be there much longer. Hell, he might retire sometime this off season. Who knows? For the Raiders, I have them taking an edge guy out of Texas and Joseph Asai. Um, the Raiders seem to have done a lot with the defense, and yet it still sucks. You could argue that has a lot to do with the fact that they traded away Khalil Mack, but to each their own. Either way, Joseph Asai out of Texas to the Raiders at 17. And then Miami at 18, I have them taking Jeremiah Owusu Koramoah, a linebacker out of Notre Dame. They get Waddle at number 3, then they grab a linebacker at 18. Just continue to put that team together. They looked really good last year, even with the unorthodox methods of Brian Flores. With you start Tua and then bring Fitzpatrick in later on. But yeah, so we'll see what happens there. I love how it has Washington listed as Washington, Washington. Just what the hell? Oh, that feels so weird. But anyway, I had them taking offensive tackle Jaylen Mayfield at 19 out of Michigan. Um, Apparently, I saw something about Jeff Bezos wanting to buy the Washington football team. That's interesting. And if I was a Washington fan, I would probably be happy about that because bye bye Dan Snyder. But we'll see what happens. For the Patriots at 20, having moved down with the Bears, I have them taking wide receiver Terrence Marshall Jr. out of LSU. Obviously, the last time we took a wide receiver in the first round, which was N'Keal Harry, that didn't work out. He has not panned out for this team. I think the biggest issue for the Patriots right now is one, team identity, because obviously you have Belichick, but you don't have Brady. You don't have the guys that made the Patriots what they were in this decade plus. So now you have to sort of find a new identity, and we're basically rebuilding at this point. There's a question of, is Stephon Gilmore still going to be here, or is he going to get traded this offseason? Um, we do have guys coming back on defense, guys like Dante Hightower, Patrick Chung, who opted out last year. But there's a question of, could they be traded as well? Who knows? Um, it sucks, but it's inevitable. The dynasty wasn't going to last forever. So hopefully Terrence Mitchell Jr. will pan out for this team. And then we have another trade, actually kind of a couple coming up. But this next one, actually, there's only two more trades left in this mock. So this one, between the Steelers and the Colts, the Colts get the 24th and 87th overall picks, uh, giving up the 21st to the Steelers. And the Steelers move up to take linebacker Micah Parsons out of Penn State. Um, the Steelers right now, I'm seeing that Ben's coming back. Juju apparently said he wants to remain a Steeler, but who knows? And obviously, there's the big fish dangling out there of J.J. Watt. Could the Steelers possibly make a move to get him to pair him up with his brothers Derek and TJ? Who knows? Um, if that doesn't happen, I think you still go for some defense here. Get Micah Parsons. You could also argue them taking running back Najee Harris out of Alabama, but if they're going to do that, then I think they stay at 24 and they don't move up. I feel like the 15, to mid 20s range is going to have a lot of defensive ends and linebackers going. And that, comes up with the 22nd pick with the Titans and Jaylen Phillips, an edge out of Miami. Their biggest issue, personally speaking, is they need to find an identity outside of Derrick Henry. We saw that against the Packers in the regular season, and we saw the Ravens do it to them in the playoffs. If you shut down Derrick Henry, Ryan Tannehill can't, lead the team all on his own. So they need to they've got to find an identity there, and they also need to fix that defense because they brought in Vic Beasley, they brought in Jadeveon Clowney. I think there was somebody else they brought in as well, and those guys just did not pan out on this team. And obviously, as well, there's the big issue of Isaiah Wilson, last year's first round pick, who had been having some off the field issues and apparently tweeted and then deleted that he was done playing football as a Titan. He only played 4 snaps, so you barely even played, dude. But I think Jalen Phillips is the move here. And then we have the Jets at 23. They end up taking Najee Harris out of Alabama. Um, Obviously Le'Veon Bell didn't pan out. I think the issue there was just the fact that Adam Gase didn't want him there, whether it was the contract he was signed to or he just didn't want Le'Veon Bell in New York. Of course, now he's in Kansas City for now. But with that being said, again, the Jets, I think they get offensive guys on with both of these picks. I think they've got to look at the defense as well in the future rounds. And if you're a guy like CJ Mosley with this team, you got to hope that you can stay healthy. I mean, CJ Mosley is a really good player, but he's been dealing with injuries the last couple of years since he signed with the Jets. So, maybe you wonder the fact that Anthony Barr chose to go back to the Vikings instead of signing with the Jets as he was possibly going to might help him there. But anyway, and then the Colts, after moving down, they take North Dakota State offensive tackle Dylan Radnews. Just continuing to add to the offensive line. Obviously, now you have Carson Wentz, or you will have Carson Wentz if, the trade remains, what it is going into the new season. But they've got a pretty solid offensive line, and honestly, they were really just a quarterback away from being possible Super Bowl contenders. Is Carson Wentz the answer? Maybe, but that's if they can. That's if Frank Reich and his team can get Carson Wentz back to what he was before injuries basically wrecked him. And then the final trade in this mock draft, the Jaguars, they moved down from 25th to 30th. I'm trying to remember how the Jaguars have this pick. It's kind of like with the Jets a couple picks earlier, but either way, they get the 30th and 93rd overall picks for the 25th and 65th overall picks. And for the Bills, they move up and grab linebacker Zaven Collins out of Tulsa. I saw something about Matt Milano's going to test free agency due to the cap issues that the Bills have. So, if he leaves, Zaven Collins could very well be your Matt Milano replacement. We'll see what happens there. For the Browns at 26, I had them taking Gregory Rousseau, an edge out of Miami. The other edge guy from the Hurricanes. And for the Browns, I mean, you guys have hope. That's what matters for you guys. You guys have hope finally. So just hold on to that and see what happens. For the Ravens, I have them taking Wyatt Davis, an interior offensive lineman out of Ohio State. Um, they're looking at trading Orlando Brown Jr. Because like he wants to play a certain position, but they have Ronnie Stanley coming back at that spot. So I guess he wants to be traded. Whoever he goes to, you're probably getting you're getting a really good offensive tackle. But I think just right here the safe pick is getting offensive lineman. For the Saints at 28, of course, as we know, with the cap and all that, they're gonna have to rebuild big time. And I think they kick that off with an edge guy out of Georgia in Aziz Ojulari. Pretty sure I botched that, but hey. Um we don't know if Breeze is coming back. He restructured his contract, but he could very well still retire. So we'll see what happens there. For the Packers at 29, wide receiver Rashad Bateman out of Minnesota. Boom, shocker. They take a wide receiver. They get help for Rodgers, but eh, the question with them is, what do you do? Doesn't look like Corey Linsley's coming back. Uh, they're gonna they're gonna shed a couple running backs in free agency. There are some questions on this team, and you got to answer them. For the Jaguars, they get Jackson Carman, offensive tackle out of Clemson. Um, got to protect Trevor Lawrence. Safe pick there. For the Chiefs, they get wide receiver Kadarius Toney out of Florida. Just adding to that offense, I guess. And for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, your Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I know I'm wearing a Patriots Super Bowl championship shirt from Super Bowl 51. Don't mind. But they get an interior defensive lineman and Christian Barmore from Alabama. And that is my first round mock draft. Now, if I decide to do this again in the future, it'll probably be a little while, but keep an eye out. I'll see you all next time. Peace.